Welcome to FCAT After School, a podcast from SFU's Faculty of Communication, Art, and Technology. In each episode, we join student hosts in conversation with alumni as they explore career journeys since graduation and gather advice for the next generation. In this episode, host Torien Cafferata, MFA graduate at the School of Contemporary Arts, sits down with BFA graduate June Fukumura, an interdisciplinary theater artist, clown, and comedian. She has appeared on the Arts Club stage, in film and TV, and an award-winning Fringe Festival solo show. In June's world, there's little difference between a work in progress and what some people might call failure. In fact, as Torien discovers, this has been one of the crucial keys to her success and to understanding what that truly means.
Recently, I went to a really great New Year's Day party.
Oh.
And we were having a really great time. It was like noon to 7 p.m. because we're all adults here. It was like super excellent crowd. And I found this disco ball on the DJ booth. And I just felt so drawn to it. It was like, oh, this is it. This is my item. It's just this magical item. And I remember just dancing to it all night, and then I realized, I'm like, oh, maybe other people want to dance with it too. And so I held this disco ball over other people who I have never met before or spoken to, and it just like lit them up. You know, it like brought the sense of like pleasure and joy, and this tiny disco ball became kind of this metaphor for this pleasure and fun and community almost. And it was being passed around the room, and people were like giving it good party energy and passing it to the next person, and
it became like this little gift economy of enchantment.
Yeah, and it was this like little microcosm, and like in that moment I was like, oh, maybe this is also where clown lives, and this is also where relational theater, like micro theater, lives.
That is June Fukumura.
I'm a Japanese-Canadian interdisciplinary theater maker and artist. I grew up in the unceded and occupied Coast Salish territories, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I'm currently the artistic director of Popcorn Galaxies, which is a experimental theater company with co-artistic director Keely O'Brien. I perform, create works through devised processes. I do all sorts of clown, comedy. I work in puppetry, disability arts.
June is an expert in creating work that pushes up against theater conventions. She's drawn to finding magic in the mundane, and hold on to that disco ball moment because we're going to come back to it. She loves subverting social scripts with comedy, playing with small, intimate audiences, and offering them the agency in driving the story itself. It's the kind of experimentation we're seeing more and more of in contemporary performance. Part of the inspiration for this, for June, can be found in the disability arts.
I'm a dyslexic artist, and sort of exploring that as part of my identity as well as an artistic practice, and using dyslexic dramaturgy as a part of my artistic process, and integrating that is something I'm exploring. So I have various disciplines and practices all kind of merging at this moment.
This convergence began, however, in June's days at SFU's School for Contemporary Arts during her BFA in theatre performance.
Yeah, so I started SFU in 2010. I took a little gap year between high school and university, where I went to Japan to sort of just have a wild year. My intention for going to SFU was to become an actor, because that's what I was doing in high school. I was really deep into drama and wanted to pursue acting. And I think I started in high school, I started in film and TV, so sort of mainstream acting, and got really sick of it by the time I was 19, and felt like I was just being chewed up and spit out by the industry, and felt like there was more to offer artistically. And so I went to SFU because I was told by someone I knew very closely that SFU had a really experimental and edgy theater program. But I really didn't know anything more than that. So I kind of blindly went into it and got lucky that I auditioned and then got accepted into their theater program, which really opened me up to all of the possibilities of artistic creation through theater, performance, devising, and interdisciplinary collaboration, which is something I didn't even know existed up until my time there.
You might already see a theme here. Trusting impulse, following a path authentic to one's own creativity and way of working more than to the expectations of others. I really love that. School as like a playground to flirt with disciplines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I found a lot of pleasure in, meeting different artists from different disciplines and the different artistic forms, and how, we can each be sort of in a relational process. You can evolve and you can push boundaries of form. I think that's sort of the most interesting thing that I found at SFU, is trying to challenge the conventions of theater. Particularly at that time, I was studying with teachers like Stephen Hill, who continues to question form and convention. And so a lot of his teachings have been filtered through my time there, and I've really incorporated his practices into my own. And, someone like David McMurray Smith, who's a clown teacher, really impacted me in a significant way through his clown work. Was something that I had no idea I would have any interest in up until, I went to SFU. And then I ended up taking David's class even after I graduated through my own studying with him. So, branching off into different fields.
Yeah, I love that we've come to clown now, because for listeners out there who maybe have a very particular or a very limited perspective of what clown is and what what it's like, what do we do in clown school, and connect.
When I first started taking clown, the only reason I took it was because it was a prerequisite to graduate. So I actually had no idea what it was. I just was told by upper years that it was a very scary class. And so I was very frightened.
Oh, wow. Scary because they're clowns and clowns are scary, or scary just because it's like really hard?
Both.
Right.
Terrifying clowns being graded.
Yeah. Tim Curry teaches this class.
Yeah, through like clowning in academia. What a terrifying thought. I first took Stephen Hill's clown class, which was primarily a kind of European lineage, sort of breaking down the ego from the outside, which was quite difficult, I think, in an academic setting. And I don't think it actually makes sense to teach clown in that particular way, because it inherently is contradictory to what clown actually is, which clown is, to me, the fool or the trickster, the outsider, the one who is a part of society, but also is rejected at the same time, and uses themselves as fool to enter into society, and also to reflect a mirror back at society through parody, through dance, through song, through mimicking, sometimes through mockery. And all of these tactics are used in order to reflect back at society the societal ills or societal joys, the various things that might be hidden and laid dormant in societal consciousness.
Right. Wow. And so you feel like that there's some kind of tension between that and academia, because academia has this, it is an institution. There's a sense of like, we're civil and respectful, and there's a legacy to protect, or prestige. And you feel like clown in many ways is like, tries to tear that down.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I think the heartbeat of clowning lies in failure. And so in academia, the idea as a student is to succeed. And a lot of times it's to do well in that class, to get a good grade. But what does that mean to take clown and fail in that class and then also succeed? Like, failure is the succeeding, but it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. No, yeah.
You're being graded for failing well. How do you fail well? And how does one put a metric around that?
Ooh, yeah. Big feelings with that. 100%. Like,
yeah, it was kind of a hilarious hypocrisy. But to me, the value of taking that class is that it really opened me up to new possibilities of performance and what it means to break the fourth wall with the audience. What does it mean to be honest on stage? Like, as someone who was trained in theater and also in Grotowski-based physical theater, you know, there's still the sense of there's an actor on stage performing, and sometimes there's a fourth wall, and it's sort of a self-contained world. But in clown, there's no such thing as a fourth wall. Or if there is a fourth wall, you're pretending and playing the fourth wall and hinting at the fourth wall being there. So there's always a sense of kind of relational reciprocity and complicité with the audience. And it kind of, that sort of blew open possibilities of performance for me. And also the aspect of comedy.
Yeah. I'm curious how many listeners out there are, you know, feeling similar tensions, you know, especially in the arts or any kind of field that is asking you to be creative or asking you to be subversive. I imagine maybe lots of poli-sci students who are out there being like, yeah, I want to be radical, but also I exist in this system. And what do you do with that tension? And how does it inform your practice? I'm really curious what that has resulted in, and if that has any connection to your various experiences. And you mentioned that you're also dyslexic too, which I imagine had some kind of connection to like tension with academia, but also a particular kind of relationship to failure and clown.
Yeah, that's a biggie. It's a goodie though.
Sorry, that's what I tried to, this is me trying to like take three different disparate concepts and be like, what, let's talk about that.
Yeah, no, it's a goodie and a biggie. Yeah, let's start with dyslexia then. Yeah, so I very recently discovered that I am dyslexic and always have been dyslexic. I just didn't really have a name for it. But all throughout university, I really struggled through academia, even though I was doing well, which was confusing, kind of like clown. I was failing, but I was also succeeding at the same time, outwardly. But I was doing a lot of work on the inside to mask and make up for what I felt were deficiencies. Like, I can't read very quickly. Memorization is very challenging for me. Cold reading can be atrocious for me. All things that, you know, actors, capital A actors, are supposed to be very good at. And all these things that I was really struggling with. So I felt like I was definitely feeling a difference between how I learn, how I understand the world around me, and how my peers were interacting with the academic world and the world around them. So it was always really difficult. And I actually, during university, I had no idea. And so I just struggled under the surface. But I guess the thing that I ended up doing, because I was struggling, for better or for worse, I sort of thought, well, I don't want to be just an actor then. If this is what it takes to be an actor, and only an actor, I would rather create my own work. You know, if it's going to be terrible and hard to audition for something, well, maybe I should just write my own work and star in it myself. So I don't have to audition, or I don't have to please other people. And so Keely O'Brien and I, we met through SFU's theater program, and we were in the same cohort. We ended up creating a theater company together in our, well, like sort of ad hoc in our second or third year. We started to sort of jam on ideas, and we weren't really a company then, but we started to make work together, and we created this show called Radiant Thing, which was a micro theater for one audience member at a time. And one of our profs said, you can't make shows for one person at a time. We need to be like, you know, making theater more accessible. Like, we need to make theater available for other people, more people, not one person at a time. And we were like, well, screw you. We're going to make a one person per show theater performance.
Absolutely. Love that.
And so that was kind of the, you know, our way of centering our own artistic vision rather than trying to conform to some sort of convention. Like, we have to do it in a theater, and the audience has to sit in seats, and they have to be facing forward. We were like, okay, so how can we change all of those rules, or at least play with those rules now that we know that the rules exist?
Right. Subverting an institution, subverting a conventions, and to create something that must have been so intimate.
Yeah, and it was an hour-long performance for one person at a time. And Keely and I were the two performers, but we had basically constructed a whole narrative that the audience had to be kind of a part of in order to activate. That's one of the cornerstones of Popcorn Galaxies today, is the activation of audience as a participant in our work rather than just a simple observer. And how can the audience have agency in their role? And how can we create magic in the everyday through those theatrical experiences?
Yeah. Okay, so magic in the everyday feels really significant to me. Like, how does one enchant the everyday? Like, what is that process? And also the re-enchant. It's like, was it enchanted before? And what happened? There's this like sort of story laden in there. What happened?
Yeah, I think we sort of stumbled upon this idea, and this has been our mandate for 10 years, and it continues to be the heartbeat of our work together. But I think re-enchanting the everyday is so important because I think when we were kids, things were enchanted. For example, we did a show called Invisible City, and it was an audio project where the audience members listen to an audio track that we have pre-recorded, and they walk around the city according to their own impulses. There's no map, there's no route, but the audio, for example, would say something like, okay, do you see that next intersection? Okay, walk to that next intersection. Do you see a plant or some sort of greenery? Go up to it and listen closely. And then we would play a little song that we wrote from the perspective of the plant.
Oh my God.
And so as you're like, putting your ear against this tree in the middle of downtown Vancouver, this song would start to play.
Ooh. So it's like drawing out the enchantment that's already there. It's been there.
It's been there the whole time. We're always living through it. We're just missing it because we're so busy thinking about other things and not present. And so how can we draw attention to the most obvious things that are right in front of us?
Oh, that's such a great it's such a great like beacon to kind of be led by. And I also, when you were talking about like children, like when we're children, we see this magic, and everything's already like, we see the enchantment that is already laden in the trees and the plants. And it made me think of like how children are also allowed to fail. So I'm curious, with all of this, when you complete these projects and you reflect on it, or you reflect on your practice, what's like the measure of success? And I use that in air quotes because I know that, again,
an A,
the failing. Yeah.
10 out of 10.
An A. an A plus. Yeah. Sometimes I call it like an evaluative lighthouse of sorts that tells you like, oh, this is what I'm feeling, or this is what happened. And so that tells me that I'm doing a good job, whether that's something that you discover in yourself or something you see in your peers or community, or if it's a particular kind of experience like pleasure, understanding, or did I make the right people kind of uncomfortable or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think what I'm trying to do more and more, and this also has to do with dyslexic dramaturgy, which draws on the idea of process being more important than the final product. And not necessarily that it's not about pursuing or not pursuing artistic excellence, but it is about the quality of collaboration. Something about the quality of collaboration and pleasure in collaborating feels really important to me as a measure of success. Like, did we as collaborators have an interesting time together? Did we explore questions? Did we get deep? Did we talk and think about things we haven't thought of before? Did we have fun? Did we have a good time? Did we laugh? Those are all things that I think more and more, it's become really important to me as a priority in my projects. And of course, what we deliver or what is shown in front of the audience is absolutely important to me, and it always will be, because at the end of the day, it is a relational thing that we're doing. This performative theatrical experience is with and for the audience. So the audience's perspective is absolutely integral to the process design. But I do think, taking time to really nurture the collaborators within the collaboration by, thinking about access needs, thinking about how people like to collaborate, thinking about duration, like what times work best for people to work, what sort of environment, helps someone do their best work.
Right.
Those qualities of interaction in the process lends itself to artistic excellence in the end. So without it, I think we're just always going to be sort of in this scarcity model where we're working ourselves, till we're totally burnt out just to deliver something that we feel is necessary.
Going back to your earliest experiences in the film TV industry, that felt like it was very product focused, and then that drew you to actually what I want is this, that it's about process. And it sounds like, if I'm hearing correctly, that it's if you focus on a process of joy amongst collaborators, that is what is going to guarantee that you'll have joy to share for the audience, and that the audience will share in it with you and will come with you because they'll see it.
Yeah. And even if the show itself or the product or whatever you deliver is maybe not what you hoped it would be, or maybe there was something missing, or you didn't feel totally satisfied, I don't think that that's the end of the project. Like, you can continue to work on that. But if you're constantly burning bridges, burning yourself out, and not having a fun time in the collaboration, I think that really will ultimately ruin or deplete you as an artist. And so I'm trying to really focus on that right now. It's not always easy because I think we work within a capitalist framework that pushes against all of those ideas, especially within disability arts. I think often it really does push against capitalism with most of us. I think we want to do more quality with more abundance.
Let's talk about that. There's this disability angle with like dyslexic dramaturgy, and just like operating from like a disability framework in theater. Again, it feels very much in line with this kind of like anti-institutional framework that understands failure not as this thing to pathologize, but as just this very natural human thing. And when you're working under capitalism, you're right. The things that the metrics of success that capitalism wants to impose upon us is not going to leave as much space for disability. So I'm kind of curious, what does dyslexic dramaturgy look like, or disability dramaturgy look like? Like, how do you, if there's disabled listeners who are like, oh, I want to be working in that and making art as a disabled artist, what does that look like?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it, and this is all like emerging ideas for me, so I'm sure my ideas will evolve. But at this moment, I really think about like, what are the environments that disable us? Because I think on one level, yes, disability, if you have a disability, it's very difficult to live in the world because the world, this capitalist world, does not accommodate disability or thinks of you as less than because you're not as productive. So yes, absolutely, disability. However, like, what are the circumstances that enable you, like bring you to life? Like, what are all of the ways that actually enable you to do your best work? Or what are your superpowers as someone who thinks and acts and perceives the world differently? Rather than concentrating on the setbacks, like, what are the opportunities that you bring? For example, I think the reason why my career, my artistic practice looks so kind of like a mosaic is because I'm dyslexic. And the ability probably for you to be able to string all these disparate ideas into one podcast is because you also have some sort of neurodivergence too that allows you to see kind of a holistic, bigger picture.
Oh, I feel seen.
And that you don't have to, you feel comfortable, and I feel comfortable not necessarily going from A to B to C, that it can be nonlinear and nonlinear sequential, and I live very comfortably in that space. And so, of course, the work that I create has those qualities within it. It's a nonlinear sequential, very divergent, kind of pushes up against institution, subversive, playful, and full of neurodivergent joy, because that's just how I operate. And so for me, I keep thinking about like, okay, what are the things that we can do in order to enable all of these things that lay dormant inside of us? And of course, accommodations are very important, but like, what are the things that we can do to like enhance and even feature, illuminate all of those differences that actually help everyone in the end?
That resonates so strongly with me. Like this understanding that disability, if we see it as this like in this social model, like that it's a social construction, that means that I feel like a lot of us exist among like a lot of spectra, and that there are conditions that could be disabling to a lot of people, like even people who think they're neurotypical or maybe are neurotypical in certain contexts. You put them in just a slightly different condition, or like take certain things away, and then suddenly they're like, oh wow, this is disabling, and I am so it makes me think a lot about that.
Exactly. And I think a lot of my deaf and hard of hearing friends talk about like, we're all going to be deaf and hard of hearing at some point, or like some sort of spectrum towards it. Like we are all going to be at some point, experiencing some level of disability in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. You could become disabled overnight.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. And so it's not like it happens over there to someone else, but it's actually a part of the human condition. And like you say, it's like, it can really enable everyone. Like if, for example, I like to have my scripts sent to me like 2 nights or 3 nights ahead of time when I'm doing a reading for a play or an audition or anything. And I like to have the script in sans serif, which is a font that allows me to read better, in maybe size 12 or 14 font, which just enlarges the font so it's just clearer on the page. Like I think that doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is like, oh my God, these words are too big and too clear and spaced out.
What is something that you cannot stop thinking of in the past, present, and future? So it could be either any one of those things, something that's haunting you from the past, or something that's haunting you in the present, or something that's haunting you from the future.
Yeah. I think the thing that keeps me up at night is this idea of comedy now. What is the role of comedy in this present reality, in this North American context?
Yeah.
As an artist, what does comedy do? And I think I'm asking this because our current reality keeps shifting. It's just so rapidly shifting every day. Like there's more and more, obviously geopolitical things happening in the world, a lot of interpersonal things happening in the world, local things, there's environmental factors. There's just so much going on. And I continued to ask, why comedy and why now? And how can my comedy, or where does my comedy sit in the spectrum? Because I think it is really important, but sometimes I do also feel very bogged down by the atrocities and the, various things going on in the world. And I'm trying to really find my voice inside of this moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big answer for a big question. Because I can imagine there might be some listeners out there being like, right, but like climate change and war and genocide and all these things, and sometimes, we can easily like look at that as this like false dichotomy, like, well, but we want joy in the world, right? Like, what do you do when you come home from a long day and you are bogged down, you're exhausted and drained? Where do you go? We go to the clowns and the comedians, and we do that as a reparative thing. But yeah, I'm thinking again back of what you said about challenging these institutions and challenging capitalistic metrics of failure, and in what ways can comedy and satire actually feasibly, measurably, actionably challenge these, and what does it provide? What is it for?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about pleasure activism and just the role of pleasure in making art in general and relating to people. And actually, one funny way kind of comedy sort of slipped into my life is recently I went to a really great New Year's Day party.
And here's where June told me her New Year's Day party story you heard earlier.
And I found this disco ball on the DJ booth, and it was being passed around the room, and people were like giving it good party energy and passing it to the next person.
The gift economy of the disco ball, passing it around a room full of adults, a simple act that unlocked communal joy, an impulse to re-enchant an otherwise grown-up gathering.
That was sort of like a glimpse into this question that I've been having. Like, what is the role of pleasure and comedy now? And it kind of started to crack that open for me, and I felt like, oh, maybe it's in places like this. It doesn't have to necessarily be on a stage or written on a grant or, written academically about it, but it's actually like happening all the time if we can frame it in such a way that there is a sense of play and reciprocity. We don't even have to call it clown. We can just call it reciprocity.
Yeah, it's magic. You were sharing magic.
Yeah, it was amazing. The people like brought out their dance moves, and they were like boogieing to this like tiny little disco ball all night. It was all day. It was so great. People were lit up.
I love that so much.
Yeah, and at the very end, everyone was like, disco, yeah! Like, there's like this weird synergy that happened just around this like one little item. But I don't know, there's maybe something in that. But it's a continuous question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's as good a place as any to end with the sharing of magic, the enchantment found in a disco ball at a New Year's Day party. That's beautiful. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your magic with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Discovery, disability, disco balls. June made me think a lot about what messes and magic from my life I had been ignoring or pathologizing with internalized ableism as a fellow neurodivergent artist. Studying it doesn't mean that I never do it. But ultimately, hearing June talk and seeing her performance work just made me miss playing in that brazen, childlike way that places process over product and transforms failure into joy, and without a second thought shares that enchantment with everyone at the party. I'm Torien Cafferata. Thanks for dropping by after school.
Many thanks to June Fukumura and Torien Cafferata for sharing this candid conversation on failure and our ability to re-enchant the everyday. FCAT After School is produced by Emma Jean, Torien Cafferata, and Stephanie Werner, with help from Stu Pop and Tessa Perkins-Deneau. We respectfully acknowledge the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kakite, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen peoples on whose unceded traditional territories our 3 campuses reside, and where many of the stories shared in our series take place. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave us a rating and subscribe to FCAT After School wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at FCAT at SFU. That's FCAT at SFU across all platforms. For feedback or guest suggestions, reach us by email at fcateng@sfu.ca. All links in the show notes. See you next time.